When it comes to how Americans and their households handle their finances, some of the statistics I'm going to share are quite scary. And I was one of those stats back in 2013 and 2014 when I had over $110,000 in consumer debt. I have 5 maxed out credit cards, 1 personal loan, 1 401k loan, and 2 car loans. The purpose of this video is not to scare you with these financial statistics, but to actually encourage you to get out of it or stay out of it.
No, I gotta get out of the flow.
Well, then get out.
I'm in the flow. That's what got me here.
If you're feeling hopeless right now with where you are with your financial journey, trust me, I had the same feeling around this time 10 years ago. You can get ahead despite what people may tell you. And the first alarming statistic I found is consumer confidence in 2023. This is one tracker that the Fed and the White House both pay very close attention to, especially with the election year coming up in 2024. What the US consumers spend represents more than 2/3 of the nation's economic activity. The American economy largely depends on how average Joe and Jill, like you and me, spend our money. And most Americans are either very concerned or somewhat concerned about their family's financial security. And according to the study from Northwestern Mutual, about 79% of Americans are very concerned about their family's financial security, mostly from anxiety about high interest rates, layoffs, and inflation. The University of Michigan's preliminary reading of its consumer sentiment index dropped to 60.4 for November 2023, which is really bad if you don't really pay attention to the index. Just to give you an idea of how to read the index, readings below 75 are considered moderately pessimistic, and while readings above 100 signal a boost in consumer confidence. The index actually dropped to about 54 way back over here and over here in July 2023, and now it's climbed back up to 60, which is still in the negative territory. The last time we saw the index above 100 was right before COVID right there shut down the entire US economy in February 2020. So it's been about almost 4 years now since we saw high confidence from US consumers. And this is the lowest reading in the index I've seen since August 2011 when it was at 55.8. And going into 2024, this index is not going to jump right back up to 100 in a matter of months. It's going to take a while until we get the confidence back to where it was before 2020. And it could go 2 ways. The Fed funds rates remain at 5.25 to 5.5% going into 2024. And the consumer confidence index could remain steady in the 60s or slightly go lower to the 50s. If the Feds decide to raise higher interest rates going into 2024, which is highly unlikely because they're paying very close attention to this, then we could see an even lower consumer confidence index going into 2024. I did a small survey on my channel about what people are focusing on during the 2024 presidential election. No surprises there. Over 58% of respondents said economic issues. People are having a hard time buying a house. Now, Americans having a hard time getting out of student loan debt. The gas prices went back up and now it's finally come back down. But one of the only things people will remember is how the gas prices were during this administration. Gasoline prices are the most influential in consumers' view on inflation. And if you ever study how Jimmy Carter lost his re-election so badly in 1980, it wasn't just how he handled the hostage crisis in Iran, but it was how he lost control of the US economy and energy shortages. Could this happen again in the 2024 election? I don't like to talk politics on this channel, and I'm not by any means an expert in politics, but I'm seeing a repeated pattern going into the 2024 election season. But if you're asking me what I think the Fed will do in 2024, if the consumer confidence index remains at 60 and lower to the 50s going into the first quarter of 2024, I think the Fed could end up cutting interest rates 3 or 4 months before the election day. Could I be wrong? Absolutely. But this is going to be the main topic in every debate we're going to see in the 2024 election. What Americans want is stability, and they haven't felt stable since COVID-19 shut down the US economy in March 2020. And the next one is a crazy number, no matter how much I preach this, because in 2023, almost 70% of Americans don't have a high yield savings account. And according to the 2023 study published by Santander, only 32% of people move their money to a high yield savings account to take advantage of the high interest rates. I've been with Ally Bank for about 7 years now, and they're paying me 4.25% in APY as of 2023. And I'm not sponsored by any banks or have any affiliate links, but this is just a no-brainer to switch switch from a regular savings account to a high yield savings account. But the important thing to note here is that 73% of Americans were unable to save any money due to inflation. This is evident when we're paying goods and services at the 2026 or 2027 pricing level in the years 2022 and 2023. And 30% of respondents just had no clue that a high yield savings account even existed. I need your help. Spread the words around because people are leaving money on the table. All you need to do is just show them the following math here. For every $1,000 you leave in the HYSA with a 4.5% APY, that's $45 you earn every year from the bank. But if you leave it in a traditional bank like Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, or other big names with a 0.01% APY, that's 10 cents you earn every year from the bank. Do I want $45 or 10 cents? That's a no-brainer, right? But what if you had $30,000 in an emergency fund that pays you 0.01% APY in a traditional bank? That's $3 you earn every year from the traditional bank. It doesn't even keep up with inflation. But with a 4.5% APY, that's $1,350 you could earn from a high yield savings account every year. And remember that the yield will compound too. So in year one, assuming that you start the balance with $30,000 at the beginning of the year, you could finish the year with $31,350. And in year two, assuming that you start the balance with $31,350 and the APY remains the same at, let's say, 4.5%, you could finish the year with $32,760. So no matter how much money you have in your savings account right now, don't leave money on the table. You want to have your money work for you, and you can download my savings tracker and spreadsheets for absolutely free by visiting HYSA.com/resources. You do not need a credit card to apply whatsoever. These financial resources are absolutely free for you to use. But why are people not saving enough money? According to the studies done by Ramsey Solutions, about 34% of Americans said they're either struggling or in crisis with their personal finances. And just over half of Americans said they're having difficulty paying their bills in the past 3 months. And 42% said they're having difficulty paying for food in the past 3 months. And 58% of Americans are spending more on groceries than the same time last year. And this is true in my household because as a financial coach and a financial planner, you know I'm a nerd, and I keep a detailed record of my spending every month and every year. In 2021, my family spent on average about $600 a month on groceries, and we shop at the same grocery stores all the time. And I actually have an Excel spreadsheet that tracks the spending and how it increases on an annual basis. And in 2022, we spent on average about $700 a month, which is a 15% increase year over year. In 2023, we're on track to spend about $800 a month, which is another 12% increase year over year. As you can see, we don't spend a lot of money on groceries because we like to stay home to eat most of the time, but having that 15% increase and another 12% increase takes a big toll on most Americans making less than $100,000 a year or even $75,000 a year. If they have more people in their household, that's an even bigger increase in spending. But is inflation all to blame? Not necessarily. The first contributing factor is that 100% of Americans with student loan debts are restarting their student loan repayments. For those people who didn't take advantage of the pause on student loan repayments, they're going to have to budget their minimum payments that started in October 2023. And over 51% of Americans actually regret taking out student loans to pay for their education. And almost 40% of Americans rely on credit cards to cover their basic needs, which makes them carry their credit card balances month over month. And a quarter of them maxed out a credit card in the last 90 days. Those minimum payments will barely pay down any principal because of the high interest rates. And the third major contributing factor is how much Americans overpaid for their homes in 2021 and 2022. This is even before the mortgage rates rose to 7 or 8% this year in 2023. The math is simple. If your monthly mortgage payment is more than 30% of your gross monthly income, then you simply overpay for your home. What you really can do is to increase your income to bring it down to 25% or lower. Just because you got a 2.5% interest on a 30-year fixed mortgage, but your monthly payment is over 30 or 40% of your income, then you still overpay for your home regardless of your interest rates. And I made the same mistake, trust me, back in 2014, and I will talk more about that in a future video. And I understand that times are tough. So I encourage you to schedule a free consultation with me by visiting HYSA.com/coaching to possibly join my private client program, where I help people get out of debt faster and invest in the future. And according to the U.S. Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, over a quarter, or 26% of Americans, have no emergency savings at all. And almost 4 in 10, or 39%, had less than 1 month's worth of income set aside for emergencies. The survey doesn't really differentiate between an emergency fund and a rainy day fund. An emergency fund is where you save money in case of long-term unemployment, a divorce, or any unexpected major life changes. A rainy day fund is for much smaller expenses like having a flat tire or repairing a home appliance. If you're brand new to my channel and you're working on your financial independence journey, let me show you how you should save for your rainy day fund and then build up an emergency fund. And I've been using this financial independence checklist since 2014. Step 2 of my FIRE checklist right here is to save for a rainy day fund in a high yield savings account. This is before you even start paying down your debt. What you don't want to do is start paying down your debt. If something happens to you that requires extra cash, you're going to end up in more debt. So I always recommend that you save up to your total insurance deductibles. For example, if your car insurance deductible is $500 and your medical deductible is $500, then you should save at least $1,000 for your rainy day fund. Some people may even need $1,500 to $2,000 in their rainy day fund, depending on your financial situation. I never recommend saving any more than $2,000 in the rainy day fund when you're still in debt before going into step 4. And once you pay off your high interest debt in step 3, then you're going to start working on your emergency cash reserve. And a lot of people fail to do this because they're so focused on investing and they end up with no cash reserve. Remember, cash is king if you experience unemployment and any major life changes. What you don't want to do is end up going back into debt or taking money out of your retirement or taxable investments for any unexpected expenses. And after I paid off $110,000 in consumer debt back in 2016, I spent the next 5 months building up my emergency fund. And if you recently paid off your high interest debt, I would recommend doing the following. If you're the sole provider in your household, I recommend having at least 6 months of your expenses saved. And make sure to open up a completely separate high yield savings account that doesn't get mixed up with other savings accounts. If your monthly expenses are $3,000 a month, then you should have at least $18,000 set aside in your emergency fund if you're a sole provider. And if you're a dual income household, then I would recommend saving a minimum of 3 months of your expenses in an emergency fund, but only if your spouse can cover the expenses if one of you loses your job. If not, then I recommend saving 6 months of expenses. If you're close to your retirement age, then I recommend you start saving at least 1 year of expenses in cash reserve. This is in case of a bear market that prevents you from withdrawing your investments. Having enough cash is especially important for people who are not going to be actively employed. Some retirees choose to have a part-time job, but having at least 1 year of cash reserve could give you that peace of mind. And if you're looking to retire earlier than the normal retirement age, I always recommend saving at least 2 years of expenses to overcome any bear market years. This is also because people who retire early don't necessarily have access to the 401k or IRA just yet, and they might be relying on real estate income, business income, dividends, or capital gains from their taxable brokerage accounts. And as you get closer to your retirement, the most important thing to do is to reduce your liabilities as much as possible. You don't want to have any debt during your retirement, not even your mortgage, unless you have the money to pay it off in full. But right now, 32% of Gen Z between the ages of 18 and 26 can't afford to travel home for the holidays because of the student loan repayments. This is according to the recent Credit Karma survey. And according to Wallet Hub, over 25% of Americans still have holiday debt from the previous year. And many more Americans plan to take on more debt just to travel home or buy holiday gifts for their families in the year 2023. Most people are putting their travel on their credit cards, even though the interest rates are getting close to an average of 25%. What's another alarming stat is that the subprime auto repossession rate or repo rate is up 20.4% year over year. People are paying on average $764 a month on new vehicle purchases. The total credit card debt just reached over $1.08 trillion in total as of the third quarter of 2023. So with a 24% average interest rate, that's a total of $259 billion in interest charged every year, not counting any late fees. So that's about $21.6 billion in interest payments every month going straight to the bank. Who is benefiting from all of this? The banks who issued you these credit cards. How do you think people are getting high interest rates in their high yield savings accounts? From charging these people high interest rates on the credit cards. That's how we get paid at 4.25, 5% in HYSA. And I really encourage you to watch this 1-hour documentary titled The Secret History of the Credit Card by Frontline. I'll link that video in the description below because these banks have been robbing us with credit card interest rates for such a long time. This documentary originally aired on November 23rd, 2004. And when it comes to traveling, guys, I know you don't want to hear this, but you should not travel if you can't afford it. The only time you should travel is if you have a family emergency. I had to pause traveling when I was on my debt-free journey in 2014 and 2015. It was a short-term sacrifice I had to make so that I never had to take out any more credit card debt. And I did this. I used to borrow money to travel and have fun, but just to find out that I couldn't afford to repay my credit card debt. Holidays are all about giving, but it's not really giving if you have to borrow. And I'm not by any means anti-credit cards. Do you know what banks actually call us people who never carry their balances on their credit cards? A deadbeat. It's actually a derogatory term that bankers use to call us responsible spenders who never incur any interest charges or late fees, pay credit cards on time, and take advantage of the credit card rewards. We are deadbeats to them. They absolutely hate us. And I want you to be hated by the banks for being a responsible spender. And I became a deadbeat. Funny to say that, right? In 2015, when I completely paid off $47,000 in credit card debt, I became debt-free in 2016 when I paid off a personal loan, 2 car loans, and a 401k loan. And I want you to join me and become a deadbeat by never taking out these credit card debts that charge you 20, 25, or 30% in interest every year. I have a debt-free spreadsheet that you can download for absolutely free by visiting HYSA.com/resources.